Hi, I'm Cherise Bunn again. I am the Director of Education for Oregon Women in Higher Education. Today we're having our webinar in June about building bridges between academic and student affairs. Our presenter is Leah Grice. Unfortunately, the video, we're not able to see her, but she does have a great presentation to share with us. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Leah and she can give a little introduction about herself.
Cool. Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I'm going to share my screen now. Okay, so do we want to wait, Cherise, for a couple minutes? It's only 12:01, or do you think we're all right?
I think we can get started.
Okay. That sounds good. Okay, so like Cherise said, I'm Leah Grice. I'm currently the Student Success Advisor for the Division of Social Sciences at SOU. I'm also the Director of Annual Conference for the 2018 OWHE Conference, so that's very exciting as well. We'll move forward. Is it working? There we go. Okay, so the goals of this webinar overall is really just to share and learn from each other. So I'll be asking you to participate either via text message or online, and I'll give you directions for all of that. So share from our experiences, identified collaboration challenges that we all face, and then taking away some actionable steps so you can use them on your campus in the future. So just a little background on my perspective. So I am not an expert in this area by any means. I just identify as a student success nerd. For this for this webinar, I will be presenting on other people's research and giving tips and tricks from those. My background, I've worked in a lot of different departments. I kind of am a generalist. Here's a few of them that I've worked in the past 10 years or so. This is both as a student and a grad student and a professional. But so ultimately, with my different experiences across broad departments, knowing that there's a division between academic and student affairs, but there's also divisions interdepartmentally as well, right? So these strategies can be used in both ways. And then ultimately, my focus is on student-centered work, holistic education, educating the student as a whole person. Both positions I've held at Chemeketa and at currently at SOU have been at intersections of the academic and student affairs divisions. And from the challenges that I've faced through that, it's fueled my interest in this topic. And so this is where I'm coming from. So why should we join forces? Ultimately, students experience us as one entity, right? So we may experience students from one facet, like most of the time I'm meeting students for academic advising, but they experience all of our departments as one entity. So the more we collaborate, or more collaborative links we have between campus and around on campus, the more successful students will be. And then ultimately, it helps the whole campus. So the whole campus benefits, right? We increase student retention, we maximize their learning, assessment, accountability, and quality of our institutions increase, fulfilling overarching collegiate goals of liberal arts educations and holistic development, and then building community across campus. So everyone benefits from collaboration. So some historical background. So pre-1970s, mostly faculty were responsible for both the intellectual and social development of students. So since the 1970s, as enrollment increased, the need for the collaboration between the divisions has increased because the gap has come up because there's been a growth in the student affairs side of things. So that's kind of the background portions of it. And then ACPA and NASPA created best practices, which have also been highlighted as critical to students' academic success. So it's kind of this need for student support staff from the enrollment increases, and then the standardization of those services. So what I want to know from you all, if you can, is what your experience is. So you can either go to, for this poll, you can go to pollev.com/LeahGrice905 on the web, or you can text Leah Grice 905 to the number 22333 to join via text message. So I'll give you a couple, 30 seconds or so to get set up with that. And then okay, I'm gonna move forward. Let me know if that was too fast and you need me to go back, but. All right, so in what higher education functional area do you work? And I think if you text it or you enter it into the website, it will populate as you put them in. Nice. And then if you write a sentence that are not together, if there's spaces, it's gonna separate the words. So that's kind of why it came out. So it looks like international affairs, residence, life, possibly, housing, auxiliary services. Cool. So just kind of giving an idea of where we're coming from. So who I'm chatting with. Nice. I think we just have 4 people on, I think, anyways. So that works. All right. So what barriers have you experienced when trying to collaborate across departments or divisions so far? Have you tried any? If they've worked or if they haven't worked, so it does not matter if they've been successful or not. Politics or red tape or structure, probably, yeah. Capacity, as in probably the amount of time you have. And then people caring. Is that what I'm getting? Lack of response for folks, yep. So from what I'm understanding, or at least what I'm interpreting care to be is the lack maybe of caring around trying to make the connections, perhaps. Expectations, yep. Cool, thank you. All right, so some barriers that many of you mentioned are also found in the literature. So on the academic affairs side of things, mainly it's the lack of understanding. So especially around the purpose and mission of student affairs, so just not understanding it. Lack of recognition and rewards, and then lack of sustainable relationships, right? So there's significant turnover in student affairs. So maybe they start a relationship with one person, and then as that person leaves, that relationship dwindles because it wasn't continued on to the person who took their place. So those are from the academic affairs side of things. From the student affairs side of things, there's less freedom within the university structure to move around and to more constraints on your position, essentially. Lack of understanding the tenure process or the motivation that drives faculty on campus. And then misperceptions of student affairs across campus, right? So that where the student affairs side of things is as non-educational or the just for fun group on campus. And then overall on both sides, there's a lot of these things I'm sure we've all kind of experienced. But the 4 that I pull out or have experienced most often in my experience is just the lack of knowledge and understanding, assumptions and incorrect perceptions across campus, values and priorities, right? So each person has different priorities about what they want to focus their time on, and then time constraints, right? We're all really busy. So, and doing this takes extra time away from our plates. But referring back to the capacity piece earlier about barriers is how much time do we have in a week and how much time can we put towards this. So what is your bridge building experience? I think everyone's got access to it, so I'm just gonna skip forward. So what strategies have you tried before? So we've talked about the barrier the barriers that you've experienced. Anyone experiencing strategies that were successful or not? Any examples? Meet and greet, yep. Town halls, meetings. Advising, training, good. Meeting the faculty. Get-togethers, so social get-togethers perhaps. Yeah, so communicating across. So it looks like you've tried a lot of stuff already, which is great. Some of these things you can try on your own, and then some of these things are more structural, right? Like maybe you assign to certain trainings, right, or meetings. The strategies I'm going to show you next are from Joe Cuseo. He's a professor of emeritus from Marymount College in California. So he was the director of the FYS courses, or first year seminar courses, for 25 years. He's currently an education advisor and consultant for the AVID program, which works with underserved populations in high school to promote college access. In his research, he divided bridge building strategies into these 4 categories. So human relations and networking, raising awareness, forging intentional connections, administrative, and organizational. So many of your strategies fit into these, but we'll go through different topics through each of these. So strategies for building bridges around human relations and networking. So doing small favors for each other. An example of this might be collecting and sharing data around student success or other things you're working on, passing on articles that you think other folks on campus might enjoy or learn from, inviting people to lunch. The more regular, the better. So ultimately, getting to know people combats the lack of knowledge and trust barriers. For example, this summer's a little slower, so I'm able to do this. But we have Tuesday Market in Ashland, which is like the farmer's market. And so a group of us have coordinated across campus to every Tuesday walk down to the market together and have lunch. So that gives me a chance to connect with folks I haven't maybe throughout the year because I was busy, but also then get some time out of the office, right? So have that social time together. And then connect other people that I know around campus with each other. So connecting faculty to staff members and vice versa. So that's a really great way. Cuseo mentioned if you do it on a regular basis, like if you pick once a month and maybe you can get 12 faculty throughout the year, and then you continue on with that in the future. So making it a regular thing, you might be able to get through even all the faculty in a certain department in 1 year if you'd like. Or you can invite them all as once. So if you wanted to invite different faculty groups together to have lunch, that works as well. Coffee and other social things work too. Inviting someone to join at a conference. So this helps expose others to your field and kind of combats the lack of understanding piece across campus. Attending each other's events. So not only does this support or shows that you support what other folks are doing on campus, but also you might learn something. So you're able to gain that knowledge and connect with folks that way. Familiarize yourself with the interests of individual colleagues. So this can be both professionally and leisurely. So you never know what connections you might be able to find. For example, at SOU, we have an environmental science professor who had a passion for crew or rowing. And he now coaches both women's and men's, the club crew teams at SOU. And the women's team took silver in their first year this year. So that is a way to find connections based on what the passions of different colleagues are around campus and how they can connect with different programming and support student success holistically that way. Recognition. So a lot of times this can put us student affairs people off a little bit, right? Because we are like, we don't get recognized for our stuff. So making sure that people get recognized is good, but knowing that it's small things, right? It doesn't have to be a big banquet and giving them giving folks awards across campus. It's mainly like even just shooting a thank you email saying, hey, I noticed you came to my event and supported this. I was really appreciative of it. I hope to see you again, right? Something small and just small things go a long way, I think. So recognizing that folks did go out of their way or were there to support you is always a good thing. Enlisting the support of your higher ups or influential members on both sides of the community. This will help. They may have or may be able to help with incentives for collaboration on both sides. And then also help shift the culture toward collaboration on campus. If it's a priority for the higher ups as well, then the shift tends to happen a little bit easier. And then welcome new folks. So introduce yourself and create relationships early. This can be just sending an email to the new faculty or the new staff members on campus. If anything, it will let them know what you do already, but then also most likely they will remember who made them feel welcome when they first arrived. So it sets the tone for collaboration right up front and offers or opens that door for new folks. That's a great way to do it as well. So in the raising awareness section or category, Cuseo says, presenting on both sides. So invite folks to make presentations on your turf, and then you work to see if you can make presentations on other folks' turf. Essentially, that can be through meetings or professional development things that are already set, but that creates and fosters the understanding of your work, right? What's the purpose? What do you do on campus that serves students, and what do they do, and how do they connect? Or how do we see that the overall goal is the same, essentially, student success? Offer workshops for professional development. So, for example, student affairs folks can present on something in your area or first year experiences or first year student experiences type of thing. And then faculty maybe present on tenure process, so we know what that is, or other current research, right? So maybe what you're working on, and then folks can kind of understand where you're at, and we can find connections that way. Writing articles for on-campus publications that are read by a variety of folks. So this could be student newspaper, this could be faculty newsletters, or a blog of some sort. If there's already some sort of publication on campus that folks read, you can write something on your own, maybe about your own research or about your own work that you're doing, but then also highlighting student experiences that cross a lot of divisions, right? So when I presented this in January at the conference, we heard from someone, I think she was in the marketing department for OSU eCampus, and they highlight student experiences each term. So they focus or feature a student essentially, and they show and share a bit of personal stuff, or show them in a personal light, but then also show like if they've used different services, what they've learned and gained from those services. So rather than writing an article that says, hi, I'm Leah and I work in advising, and this is all the stuff advising can offer for students, coming from the student perspective and showing that how advising has helped this student or disability resources or maybe their sociology or anthropology class, right? So things like that puts the center or the student at the center again and shows them as a whole person and how they interface with the university, and then shows the purpose of what we all do in our individual offices. So that's what OSU eCampus does as an example of that. Being conscious of the language we use. So things like extracurricular versus co-curricular, student activities office versus student engagement or development office, residence life versus residential education. A lot of times the language we use can change the misconception of student affairs purposes on campus from more of the, oh, they're just for fun off to the side, to a more integral portion of student success. So when you're creating new things or changing titles or thinking about what you want to call yourself, if you can pick your own position title or anything like that, you can just intentionally think about what language you use across campus. And then mainly, or a lot of things too, creating and articulating your purpose, right? I kind of mentioned that a few times around, but articulating that, showing learning outcomes, constructing a development curriculum that creates an easy entry point for faculty to engage with you, provides schedules or syllabi or transcripts for an assessment for students and their engagement activities on campus, to provide more of an academic structure to the student affairs side of things, and realize that, have students also realize that it's an educational piece and that they're learning things as well, versus just having fun. So that's part of it. But all right, the forging intentional connections between students' curricular and co-curricular experiences section. So understand the academic and student development curriculum on both sides. So an example of this is at SOU, we have a social justice minor out of the sociology and anthropology department. And I met with a few staff members over in the SOU Resource Center, so the Women's Resource Center, Queer Resource Center, Multicultural Resource Center, etc. And was chatting with them because they work with a lot of students who are interested in, and they do a lot of social justice work through those offices. And I asked them if they knew that there was a social justice minor that the students could like combine with that experience or connect with that experience, and they didn't know about it. And that's not really anyone's fault, or it's everyone's fault, I guess, not learning on one side and then also not expanding and telling everyone on campus what offers you have, right? So taking the time to learn as much as you can about the other folks' offerings, but then also letting people know around campus the offerings that your office offers as well, so you can make those connections for students because it makes sense. So you could also create linking modules or assignments for faculty that they can conveniently add to their courses. The example of this is again with our, we had a Queer Indigenous Studies course that collaborated with the Queer Resource Center and hosted a Queer Indigenous gathering for the students' final project. That's more of a final project, so it probably was more than just a cookie cutter module or assignment that you could fit in. But thinking about ways in which your office can connect with faculty, or faculty thinking about ways in which you can connect your classes to the student affairs activities going on already, would make it, and these make it easier for them to incorporate them into their syllabi already. And also teach courses. So we don't always have time to do this, but if you can find a spot on campus where you can either teach course or co-teach a course, it really is helpful to understand the academic side of things a bit, right? The processes and policies with teaching a class and the classroom dynamics, and then also establishes the academic connections between the student development and academia, right? So it kind of forges or crosses the bridge of that gap there as well. So the last section that CUSEO offers strategies on capitalizing, administrative and organizational approaches. So capitalize on already occurring or naturally existing intersection points. So things like academic or career advising, personal counseling, practicums and internships and service learning, right? Things that we can connect already. Living and learning communities within residence life or residential education, places that are already at the intersection, and capitalize on those intersection points. So these two bullets are around creating issue-centered committees or ad hoc groups. So there's a lot of things that both sides of the divide have investment in, like student retention and student success. So creating an ad hoc group around that, and we're encouraging folks from both sides to participate and give their perspective, right? You all mentioned earlier, like committees or trainings or other meetings that that's how you've interacted with the other groups. So this is a way. Also, if there's an incident on campus, so you can create a critical moment learning team. So if like a bias incident, or if there's a mental health incident on campus, you can create a team to address that with folks from both academic and student affairs as well. Arranging for temporary professional exchanges. This is a little bit harder because it takes the higher ups probably support to do this, but essentially utilizing release time, internal sabbaticals, creating temporary leaves for professionals who want to have a change of routine and would be willing to cross over to another division or department and embrace a different task or challenge, right? So a faculty member going and working in student activities, and the student activities going over and teaching class or understanding the academic side of things. So with faculty, this is a little easier because they have, if they have tenure, they have the freedom within the university to kind of work around and shift things around. And so this might be an interest or an opportunity. Creating joint appointments between academic and student affairs. So things like coordinator of the first year experience or provost for academic success and engagement, right? Finding intersecting points and creating a position or having positions within those intersection points to make that connection. Most of these obviously are through, are going to be focused more on what the administration can do rather than perhaps myself, who's just an advisor at this point. But keeping this in mind, if you have folks that you are going to report back to, or if you want to give the ideas to other folks, or if there's anyone on the webinar currently that is an administrative position, these ones would be good for you. And then placing faculty member and student affairs professionals within the same geographic location. This is my current situation. So I am an academic advising, but my office is in the social science building. So I have an office near all the faculty. So faculty, since we're in a geographical location, they swing by, we connect as more of a, in the passing by, they see me more often. They're more available, or I'm more available directly to them versus it makes it easier rather than having to walk across campus to get something, or calling someone you don't know who's on the other side of the campus or at a different location geographically. This is a strategy in which to negate that. And then providing incentives. So some incentives that we can provide for both sides is mini grants or travel funds or campus space. So if you're creating a new initiative or wanting to create this collaboration, those are some things that can support that collaboration. And so if higher up folks have some budget that they can shift around or space that they can work with, they can make that happen, and then create initiatives for, create incentives for the initiatives. All right. So some final thoughts. Relationship building is super important. So this is one of the categories, but overall in my experience, the more you know folks on campus, or the more they know you both personally and professionally, the more likely they are to reach out to you if they have questions, the more likely you are to reach out to them if they have questions. When I first came on in my position last summer, it was in summer, and it was when I first came on, so I had the freedom to do it, but intentionally taking time to meet with folks in departments across campus. And this can be like just taking a half hour a week, right? It doesn't have to be a whole lot of time. You could even do it on your lunch break or whatever. So if you can't find time, because the time constraint is like the biggest piece. But you could do that once a week for the whole year and get through 30 to 40 folks, meet 30 to 40 different people. And really all I said was, hi, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'd like to know about you. Can we set up a time to chat? And sometimes it's easier than others, right? Because everyone's got a busy schedule, but that intentional relationship building has really helped me in my experience. And then taking the time, right? A lot of times we get stuck in all the items that we have on our to-do list, and we all are very busy and overworked, and I acknowledge that. But at the same time, if this is a priority, or if you want to better serve students, making this a priority, and again, just like a half hour a week, or even a half hour a month, right? You can start really small if you need to. But taking the time to intentionally lift our head out of our bubble, right? And this can be across academic and student affairs, but also just across different divisions on campus. Like realizing that it's easier for me to sit and do my to-do list and work on things in my office, which is true, but then the importance of making those connections. So taking the time to send an email over to financial aid and say, hey, I want to learn about what you do over there. Can I come chat with you for 10 minutes, not even a half hour, depending, right? And just prioritizing that. And then remembering that students are why we are here, right? So if we want to serve them holistically, our collaboration is imperative to their success. So they experience us, like I said at the beginning, as one entity. And so even though we experience them in one facet of themselves, generally, they're experiencing us as a whole. So the more we can communicate across campus, the more holistically we can serve them and the more successful that they will be. All right, any questions? I ran through that pretty quickly. So if you want to have some access to all of that, I'm sure this will be posted again on the website, but I can send out the PowerPoint if that's helpful. There also is a handout on the Oregon Women in Higher Ed website already. At the conference programs from last year's conference, there's a link at the top that says see conference session materials here, and mine's the first session 1 folder, so you can snag it there. You can also see the PowerPoint from when I presented as well. This is much more in depth because in presenting there's a much more interaction with folks in person rather than on a webinar. So any questions at this point?
Hi, Leah, I have a question from one, well, actually I have a couple.
Sure.
So who have you found to be good first connections on the academic side of the university?
So in my experience, it's been the department or division heads. So through either the heads of the department or the new faculty, right? So typically what I've found is the faculty that have been here a long time, not old, sorry. They tend to be more resistant to change a little bit. And so, or it can be harder to get a hold of them for whatever reason. So at least at SOU, the division director is helpful. And then also the program chairs for the faculty, because they have time designated to managing the program as well as teaching. So they can use that time to kind of, I guess, engage with you or encourage their faculty to engage with you. And then the new faculty. So the new ones, when they come on campus, making sure to reach out to them or trying to reach out to them and say, hey, I realize you're new and this is what I do, and start that relationship early. That creates that culture of collaboration from the bat when they first get there versus trying to change the way it's been with the faculty that have been there a long time. Surprisingly, though, I think that this is a misconception on campus that student affairs folks have. Most of the faculty I work with are pretty willing and want to serve students, right? They're here because they like teaching, well, I guess at SOU, right? So it depends on your institution as well. But generally, the folks I use, if I reach out to faculty, they're pretty willing to respond back. It might take them a few days because they're really busy. But I see just stay persistent. Persistent in the relationship building and persistent in offering your services, I guess. Make it the easiest for them, if that helps. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so.
Cool.
There's a couple more. So what are some specific things you have done on your campus to create connections? Like a specific example or maybe your favorite example?
Favorite example. So like I said earlier about the weekly market, right? Where I always have to find some place to do lunch, so or I can eat lunch by myself. But so finding just something, you could do it on campus even, right? You could just go walk down to the dining center or walk somewhere else. It doesn't have to be the market, but set up a weekly or monthly thing where you can meet people in a non-professional space. I think that one allows you to get to know each other a little bit better or differently at least, and then two relieves that kind of work pressure, right? It's like you're going and enjoying yourself. so I just set that up, and I was like, I'm going anyway, so might as well invite other folks. So that's been one that's been pretty successful so far. I've only done it a couple weeks, but it's been good. And then otherwise, it's really, I can't think of, I guess, so if it's one of a specific initiative, finding the folks that want to collaborate, if that makes sense. So I tend to send out the word that I want to collaborate with lots of different folks, but then there's certain ones that respond better or have the drive to collaborate back. And I think that's very helpful. So for example, I'm kind of a one-person office over here in social sciences. I'm connected with the advising office, but it's I'm a little different. So because I have this, I like the human interaction, and the relationship building is one of my strengths. I reached out across campus, but I found other folks that were similar to me, right, who were in a one-person office or had only one or two folks in their office and collaborated with them on programs. So our Career Connections office is just one person at this point. So Max and I, who's the coordinator over there, we've done a lot of career preparation activities with the social science students, because I have connections to that and he has really good resources there. And so finding those connections. Also the certain faculty on campus who are interested in collaborating. I've connected with the intro to the major classes with different groups. And so I go into those intro major classes, like for psychology or criminology, and do little classroom announcements of who I am and how I can help, but then also help with their intake advising. So if they're declaring their major, that's kind of a way that I've connected with faculty. That's been a successful as well. Finding ways that my skill set can make other people's jobs easier is kind of how I've done that. And then also focusing on the relationships that that are reciprocated is helpful. Kind of like a strengths-based perspective, right? Instead of focusing on the area of weaknesses or the relationships that are really tough, I tend to put more effort into the relationships that are working really well and strengthen those.
That's awesome. So we have another question. What have been some specific successes in your bridge building initiatives? And like, do you have an example of the student benefit?
So I just, mainly have anecdotal student benefits from students who have responded either personally to me, or we have some assessments that we pass out via Qualtrics or online surveys. And essentially, so one example would be we had an alumni career panel event for the social sciences. So this is one example where the Career Connections coordinator, Max, and I combined efforts or collaborated along with the faculty in the social sciences department or division to host this panel. And essentially we collaborated and got 9 different alumni from the social sciences to come and answer questions. One of our faculty members hosted the panel, so did all the questions and moderated it. And then we had some networking groups that we did as well, and then some social time afterwards. So it was a 3-hour event, and it took a lot of effort. So from that, though, then we collected responses on the success of the program or things that they would add. And most things, I think, my role is very unique because it's new, so it's a pilot. And so my attitude this year has been, if anything, I'm trying something, right? And so it's going to have more benefit than not doing it. But then taking those snippets of personal anecdotes and then passing them up along the chain to the administration to know that, hey, the efforts and initiatives we're doing across campus are actually having an impact. I know that career development specifically has been not as much of a priority at SOU lately. So anytime I can we can show that Max's work and my work are helping students to gain positions. We did have a student who at least got some interviews out of those networking events, and then one person actually got a job from the career fair. So went to the networking alumni event, learned some strategies, went to the career fair, and then got a job from that. So that's kind of I guess, an example. A lot of things we're looking at too is my impact on retention. So in my specific role, they're looking at the students that I met with for advising or student success or career advising pieces, and comparing their term-to-term persistence rate versus the college as a whole. And this can be skewed because the students who are meeting with me may be the students who aren't as struggling as much, or that they're more proactive, right? So there's other factors definitely than just me meeting with them. But overall, that data looks promising. And I think a lot of times it's helping the connection for the faculty too. For example, things like how to do an override in the banner system. Faculty don't always know and don't always get the training well over here. And so having someone that they know that they can go to and email directly versus emailing the general registrar email and getting a response to someone that they know, that has shown, the faculty have shown or have expressed gratitude for that, I guess. So long story short, there's been a lot of ways that we've tracked it a bit, and we're going to be coming out with kind of what I've done, a report of what initiatives we've done and how they've impacted it. A lot of times it comes down to quantitative over those anecdotal things, but I think both are important. So making sure if you're doing it in your position or within your department, collecting data, both qualitative and quantitative, is always good to show the impact.
Awesome. Thanks, Leah. I have one more question for you. You've worked at several different types of institutions. You've worked at like larger public. I think you at least attended, if not worked at the private, and you've worked at community colleges. Have you seen sort of the relationship building be different across institutional types? And do you have, have you seen a huge difference in kind of even a way or different ways to be more successful in different ones? Does that make sense?
In building bridges?
Yeah.
Yeah. So each institution type is going to have a different flair to it, right? A different priorities, a different structure. And the bigger they are, the harder it's going to be. Although when I worked at OSU, that's the big public institution that I worked at as a graduate assistant. There was a big push those 2 years on the first year experience. So there was a big push across campus from the administration and higher ups to have that collaboration. So it almost actually felt easier because the culture was there, and there was kind of a expectation that you would collaborate or find a way to connect across campus, maybe not personally, but connect to your role within what you were doing across campus. With the community college and at SOU, there's more of a divide. And I think that is my experience in advising, right? So the different expectations of advising, if you're a professional advisor versus advising as a faculty member. And so that divide has seemed pretty large. And I think at Chemeketa, I wasn't in this spot as much to collaborate with the faculty. I would just have the students before they would go into the certain programs or take the certain classes. And so being at SOU, where I'm working with the faculty and students within the major rather than kind of the general prerequisite courses, it has been a different experience, or my perception, like my misperception, right, has shifted. So at Chemeketa, because I was just hearing the frustration from students about faculty advising, that's kind of my perspective, or that's how I was like, oh, they're not doing very well. So, and then that just kind of created that perspective and didn't challenge that perspective. So when I'm here, I'll be talking to staff and staff folks, and they'll be like frustrated about faculty, and then I'll be talking to faculty, and they'll be frustrated about staff. And so realizing that we both have these misconceptions, and we both kind of hang out with the folks that have the same misconceptions, so it just continues to create that bigger gap rather than trying to ask or see like what's the other side think, right? So I think a lot of it has to come down to the culture of the institution that you're at. So I think the smaller the institution, the probably easier it is to collaborate. But again, at OSU, there was more spots for me to collaborate than there is, or it seemed easier to do so there than it does in my current position, just because of the culture at this point. There seems to be more, at least in my experience, more silos or gaps at SU, and we are much smaller campus than OSU. So, and I think that's indicative on history with SOU and OSU and the different space we're at the different part of the institution. But ultimately, relationship building works throughout the whole way, right? If you just go and say hi and introduce yourself, you're going to get somewhere, and then learn something, and then hopefully break down those misconceptions that you have personally, and then continue to build those relationships.
Great. Thank you so much, Leah. Any final thoughts you want to say, or?
I don't think so. Ultimately, I've been tooting the relationship porn all day. But here's my references too, if you want to read any of the articles or things that I used for this. And there's plenty more where these are just 4 I picked, but or 5 I picked, pardon me. So there's plenty more, and lots of research is done around this. So if you're interested in learning more about it, there's plenty of stuff out there to do it. Ultimately, I think it comes down to prioritizing it too, right? So if you want to do it and you make it a priority, then it's more likely to happen. So
awesome. And I'll share the recording of this webinar, and then your PowerPoint through to all the people who registered, because not everybody was able to make it today. But thank you all for coming, and thank you, Leah. It was great to hear and be encouraged to build relationships even more. So that's awesome.
Perfect. All right. Thank you.